Hi, welcome to the Gentle Art Podcast with Gene Dunn. Today we have the pleasure of sitting with Harris Pappas. Let's give him a little hand clap there, Walt. I was thinking about why I am so interested in this podcast, and this may be a kind of odd analogy, but I will tie it in. Mr. Vizio, my Kung Fu teacher, always says, like, when you're fighting with someone, you want to give them a three-dimensional look, that like your hands, your body create a three-dimension, and that's very complex for someone facing you to deal with. And I was thinking, like, why am I thinking about three dimensions with Harris? And uh, I realized that you're one of the most multidimensional people I know, and that, like, I see this a lot of times in the classroom. Like, we're I think we're much more than we give ourselves credit for. We're much, we have capacity to be multidimensional, and like a lot of times we get in these rigid, fixed ways of being. But I don't experience you like that, and that's why I'm so happy and excited to
Thank you,
to
Shane.
to like have this conversation, and also kind of delve into some of your dimensions, because to me, they're quite interesting.
Thank you.
So welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you had me on.
Um,
Yeah.
so let's start like with martial arts. So
Okay.
you can take us a little bit through your original martial art journey. I know that your dad and your parents were at the black belt graduation,
Yes.
and they were saying, he started in Taekwondo.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, I started with my twin brother. I have a twin brother, by the
Oh,
way.
uh-huh.
His name is Adam, and we've done everything together. Everything but jujitsu. So naturally, we started Taekwondo together. My mother had enrolled us, and there was another classmate of ours at the time in elementary school. I didn't really give it much thought, other than being a little boy and a way to release energy, right? So the two of us, we started, I think, when we had to have been 6 or 7,
Oh, what a great age.
and ran until about 11, 12-ish. And I got black belt, right?
Yeah,
I got the black belt. I know I had brought this up with you in the past. It's a child's black belt, but it's still something, right? You told me that. You told me that it's still an accomplishment.
absolutely.
I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a good exposure to uh, uh, um, maybe an athleticism that I didn't think I had at the time.
Uh-huh.
And you're not consciously processing that at that age, but the more that I've thought about it, I think it did. It gave me access to feel athletic, whereas traditionally I was not in sports. Like, my father was not the father that could afford the time to commit, right? He's always working, and he was providing us with a lifestyle that he didn't have, right?
Right,
And he
right.
wanted to make sure that we wanted for nothing, right? So
Why do you think your mom chose Taekwondo? Like, was she worried about you defending yourself, or did she want you to have an activity?
I don't think it was about defense. I think it was more of hearing it through the other parent. She was really close with the other
Oh,
mother,
uh-huh.
and the son that had already been enrolled, and it was in the neighborhood. It was close
Yeah.
to the house, but not from a self-defense standpoint. Although it opens the door to that. Like, once you're in it, you start
Yeah,
processing it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but speaking of the athleticism, it's to a degree, Taekwondo requires a certain amount of
Absolutely,
athleticism, right?
100%.
And especially with the kicks and the movements and um, sparring, yeah, you have pads on, but you're still engaging in it,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So, but I think it opened the door to something that maybe I otherwise wouldn't have. I don't know that I would have naturally gravitated toward that.
We get people at the school, both in jujitsu and martial arts, that have black belts in other styles, and they humbly, respectfully want to take off their belts and start again and all this stuff. And I know people throughout my life that have like, I guess they just, because of like the way martial arts has moved culturally, they feel like they're black belt in Taekwondo, or they're black belt in karate. or other arts is diminished in some way. And I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way about junior black belts. I don't feel that way about any style of martial art. I think it absolutely is 100% an accomplishment. And I I even had, I knew someone that was a very famous psychologist, and he was a Taekwondo black belt, and he would kind of have like an imposter syndrome with me. And, and I was like, no, man,
Mm.
you're like, you did that work. That was
Yeah.
the avenue in which you came through, and it's completely legit. Like,
Yeah.
it's so important.
And I think as I got older, I realized that. I didn't realize it then, and not to say that I didn't give it a lot of credit then, but I didn't maybe have a real world applicability to it
Right.
afterwards, right?
Right.
And it kind of died off towards middle school. I didn't go back, and it was only until high school that I delved back in with wrestling, right?
Yeah.
But before I get to wrestling, I wanted to jump back to Taekwondo. I didn't use it, I think, until college. I took an elective. I took a martial arts elective in college, my last semester, and it had different styles and that the professor was teaching. Um, and one was Taekwondo, and they just came back. Like we
Uh-huh.
were drilling moves,
Uh-huh.
and the back spin kick came back, like
Uh-huh.
a jumping backside kick came back, and it was just you don't realize how much the muscle memory is still there.
Yeah.
Right? Eh, however many years later, like over a decade later.
It's certainly, to me, there's an embedded thing that maybe I'm sure you realize, but you have a martial artist approach to our environment, the classroom, and our relationship. And I I also wonder to myself, like, how much of that informed you? Like in Taekwondo, you're supposed to stand straight,
Mm-hmm.
and you're supposed to be respectful,
Mm-hmm.
and you're supposed to be courteous,
All of it.
and all that stuff. And you have a relationship with a teacher. Um, and I culturally, again, I think that a lot of times that relationship is poo-pooed by the general kind of sport martial art uh, practitioner, if you will.
Yeah,
And
I don't disagree. I've seen it.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
you certainly there are
I
examples, but you have that's embedded in you as well.
the regimented, the discipline, it transferred from the taekwondo. I do like. I think it was there. I had a strict instructor. He
So
was
good, man.
very very old school.
Yeah.
He had the accent.
Was he Korean?
Yes,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
very good.
And then going into wrestling, I in high school it was just overall disciplined, right? Like you had the discipline overall because they had the junior military program in my high school. So
ROTC?
yeah, JROTC. Yeah,
Were you a JROTC?
I was.
Wow, my brother was
Yeah,
an ROTC.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic.
And the discipline there, right? And taking instruction from an early age and being able to
Did it feel natural?
it did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I think a lot of the the achievements along the way, they were shared with my brother. So like if we were facing difficulties, we were able to bounce it off of each other
Wow.
in any of those areas, whether it was the taekwondo, whether it was wrestling, whether it was JRTC. So we were experiencing it at the same time, sometimes differently, but we didn't realize because of the relationship that we had. So some twins will tell you that they have a language. We don't
Yeah.
have a language, but
Yeah.
we can read each other
Sure.
very, very well.
Sure.
Verbal, nonverbal. You could feel what the other is experiencing, not down the street, but
Right.
but in the presence of each other,
Right.
right? And able to question why we reacted a certain way or why we didn't react a certain way and
Huh.
and what would have improved it or what did they experience, what did he experience with whoever he was experiencing with, whether it was a student that he was having issues with or whether it was an instructor that he was having issues with, and we were able to mold each other, right? So I think that helped. I think that helped tremendously, but the discipline is definitely a backbone of it all. But I got to give credit to him too.
That's
So
fascinating. Like, proof of my point, multidimensional. Like, I didn't even realize that was going on. And so, like, how you think that was very important for your development?
I do. I had
By the way, what does he do?
So he's in legal too, right? So yeah.
Fascinating.
But again, the only thing we didn't do together was jujitsu, right?
Uh-huh.
So we went to the same schools, we went to the same college, we went to the same law school. Um, but this is the one experience that we haven't shared together.
Huh.
Uh, and I don't think it's
Well, back on track. Like,
good.
if you don't mind, like,
Yeah.
what's an example of like a problem or a challenge that came up that you guys discussed that like it just molded you? Do you have that?
I think from a lot. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, yeah.
There's academically, there's in the military program that we were in,
What's one that sticks
how
out?
to react. So like
Yeah.
if to not initially let your mind go instinctually, not that it's always the wrong move or the wrong decision, but when you're that young, you really don't have a filter, right? So that's how fights start. That's how you piss people off. That's how maybe you piss an instructor off. But the way that we were able to communicate with each other, it's almost like we had this internal filter where you go a little more polished, right? You go with a little bit more of an anticipatory behavior. And it helped. It helped with the other students. It helped with the instructors. It helped with um,
Fascinating.
maybe drilling with each other,
Uh-huh.
right? Or whether it was wrestling or the JRTC, if it was exams, we had each other, right? Like, not to say that you don't need a senior male figure, because I think you always do. I think what may have lacked just purely because of time with my father, we were
You
able
guys
to make
picked
up
up,
for
huh?
that. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful. So how do you make your way to jujitsu? How does that happen?
So in college, it was my summer between my sophomore, no, yes, between my sophomore and junior year. It was the
You're
'08
19?
summer.
You 19 or you're
I'm
20?
19. I'm 19 at the time. So it was the summer of '08. I had just finished coming back. It was May from college, and I was looking for something to stay active. I was always drilled that you got to go and you got to do a wrestling camp. You got to spend your off season competing with tournaments, and I was a little burnt out. I was a little burnt out after 2 full
Did you
seasons.
wrestle in college?
Yeah.
You
Yes.
did.
Yeah. So, wrestled in high school, and then I continued into college. It was D3. But for me, that was huge because high school wrestling in the city is not competitive within the state, nor is it nationally
Yeah,
whatsoever. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's lacking, to say
yep,
the
yep,
least, right?
certainly.
And you felt it. If you were a high school wrestler in the city and all of a sudden you're going upstate or you're in a Jersey tournament
Jersey.
or even on a Long Island tournament, the Long Island schools, you feel it. You feel there's a deficit. You feel it in your training, in your preparedness. Um, and that didn't take away the motivation for me. I knew that I wanted to continue it. And when I had visited the school that I visited, Ursinus, the coach, he right away, like the first impression was, wow, I want to be here,
Right.
you know? And he made you feel that way.
Yeah.
He had no reason to make me feel that way. I was not going to make or contribute to a championship team for him coming
Right.
in. I didn't have any state titles. I mean, I
Right.
placed in our regionals, um, and had a really good winning record for high school wrestling in the city, but I wasn't going to contribute to a championship team. But he made that impression on me, and I that's when I knew I really wanted. This is it. I want to go here. And then I went to a Hofstra wrestling camp in the summer right beforehand because I knew that I needed to get a good wake up call.
Right.
Um, so I went there and it was rough. It was really, really rough. It was I think it was almost,
Hofstra's D1?
yeah,
Yeah.
Hofstra D1. You had some really good guys at the time too. Um, I was following them afterwards, and like 4 or 5 of them were all Americans after that. Chris Weidman was at that camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you digressing a little bit, but getting into college, um, I was burnt out after that second season. I'd been cutting weight. I I was bulking in the off season and then losing it all,
Yeah.
to cut
Yeah,
the
yeah,
weight,
yeah.
and
So
I don't know that I was actively looking for jujitsu. That's the point I'm
uh-huh,
trying to
uh-huh.
make. I was looking for something, and you're on the internet, you're looking, and then 13th Avenue shows up, right? And
Uh-huh.
I just gave it a shot.
And we're talking '08, right?
08,
So
yeah.
we're there 3 years by that point, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. I think
Wow.
you '05, you
Yeah.
you around
Yeah,
there, yeah.
right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like what was that experience? You know, like you're burnt out from wrestling, but you want to stay active and you come do jujitsu. Was it the thing in retrospect that you were looking for?
Yeah. Yes.
And what was that?
Um, Not that I was expecting it because I didn't have this expectation, but it was as soon as I transferred into the advanced class, right after the beginning, however many weeks we were there, as soon as I got into the advanced class, I my experience. I'm not saying this from a position of like superiority, but like my experience allowed me to do this,
Yep.
right? To skyrocket. And I didn't have that before because I was getting beaten down by people far more experienced than I was.
Right.
So for me to have this ability to step into a brand new field, but have some level of
Competency. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and be able to constantly have something fresh and new. And it's like my brain was on fire, right?
Uh-huh.
I was able to see so many different perspectives in grappling that I didn't before. I was so single-minded, single-focused in wrestling. Everything is getting drilled, drilled, drilled. You're
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
beaten down in a certain
That's
way.
wrestling culture too.
It is.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you don't have I don't wanna say I'm not blaming the training partners, I'm not blaming the coaches, but if you don't catch a certain wave, you can get stuck,
Yep.
right?
Sure.
But I was still grinding it out there, but to go to the jujitsu, it was like my brain was on fire. I couldn't get enough.
So that's the thing in retrospect that you think like was so appealing about jujitsu?
Yes.
You know, Jamal Patterson, who came out of a wrestling background and a football background,
Mhm.
said like, you know, he felt empty without grappling, and it provided him just a different version of it. But that's not exactly what I'm hearing from you. It like
No.
was a whole other world for you.
It an explosion of ideas of and it my brain was processing it all at the time, and I didn't realize it until I got back to wrestling of how I was able to use the jujitsu, not move for move, but the mindset and take that back to wrestling.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So what's in your opinion, maybe from the Harris that was then, but more so from the Harris now retrospectively, what's the jujitsu mindset for you? Like, what's the thing that you like? If I'm a beginner practitioner or I'm an intermediate or advanced practitioner, that I could understand in terms of your viewpoint about the mindset.
I for I would speak to me first and then maybe more generally, but for me, it was positive reinforcement at the beginning level where it's not being granted to you. You're not being fed it and gifted it, but you're getting a degree of reinforcement, the right amount of reinforcement with the right training partners to be able to grow at the very beginning where you're not getting beaten down right away from day one. Um, I think that coupled with it's so diverse. There's so many different positions. There's so many moving parts. You have to be comfortable with that chaos. And from the wrestling standpoint, my mind was so fixated one dimensional. I don't want to say one dimensional, but it's
It's a
pretty.
complex
It,
dimension.
it
It has a
is.
lot
It's
of
very
facets, but
complex,
it's
but
one dimensional.
it's like a train's going,
Yeah, yeah,
steaming
sure,
straight through.
sure.
Right? Yes, you can be athletic. Yes, you could try to have your setups, but it's very explosive, dynamic in its explosiveness. But it's for me at the time, it was very straightforward. And jiu-jitsu was not. It was anything but. Right? It was. There's so much going on. It's so chaotic. You have to be comfortable in that chaos and your brain has to be comfortable adapting and not sitting in one fixed position, looking to improve, looking to counter. There's so many more setups in jiu-jitsu than I felt at the time than with wrestling. And for me, I was able to take that and apply it, coupled with the confidence, coupled with a few other things, which I think made me a little bit more successful when I got back after jiu-jitsu. A lot of it was cutting weight and a confidence. I think jiu-jitsu gave me the confidence. I think that is another tier of it.
Do you, do you think, just from a physical standpoint, like the the time spent on your back and the time spent in negative positions gave you that confidence?
I think the time in negative positions, my
Yeah.
back, yes, to a degree, right? To a degree where
if you don't spend time on the bottom, right, you have a confidence,
you do.
but it's gapped. It is gapped,
Yes.
right? So like,
I agree. But maybe certain positions like wrestling up from side control, right?
Right.
Like if somebody has side control and you're like trying to get up, or you're on the bottom of half guard and you're working your way up. Yes, definitively translatable from jiu-jitsu to wrestling. And the setups, like you're baiting somebody into it, right? And even with being on top, having the back, it opened up the grips, right? The security that you can obtain in jiu-jitsu by having the back fed into having control and taking the back in wrestling, because you could ride. It's called, you're just riding them out, right? Yeah, you can't submit. Yes, you can't lock. You can't lock your hands, but the hand control, double wrist, partially over the neck, cross facing, all of that is translatable. And I was able to implement it with, I guess, less experience, not less strength, because at the time of 13 we had a lot of strong guys.
Yeah,
We had a lot
yeah,
of athletic
certainly.
guys. But I was able to use that and translate that back. But for somebody as a whole, if they're just coming into jiu-jitsu, I think that there is, if you're committed, if you're open-minded, you can use the confidence that is available to you early on to grow. I think that's very important.
It's a fascinating thing to say, especially from someone that comes from a competitive environment. I'm not so sure the Taekwondo school that you were in was ultra competitive,
No.
but certainly a wrestling environment is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I've been in wrestling rooms, I know. And I've trained with a bunch of very good wrestlers. But to hear you say, or to hear a very competent practitioner who's introspective say that it's very important to have at least what I'm hearing here is that initially there's an environment that is helping people to cultivate the qualities necessary to have a long-term good practice.
Yeah.
Rather than you know, which I think is trending in jiu-jitsu now, like going, it's a return to how it was when I first started, like sink or swim, bro. Like you're gonna make your way or you're not, and if you're not, the next person will, and see you later. It's never been our approach. I just thought it's a terrible method, and to hear you confirm, because the other thing I wanted to say, like, and I'll segue back into this, but like you're one of the toughest people I know in so many ways, and I'm watching you. I'm watching you train. I'm watching how you integrate your ideas into training with people that are very skilled, uh, outweigh you, all that stuff. And why I say tough is because I see you managing all of what I perceive are stressors in a very functional way. That to me equates to toughness. It's not like, you I don't know what, like, it's not a feigned thing. It's active. It's an active practice, and that's how I perceive it, right? So to have you really acknowledge that, I think is a beautiful point. It's a really, not only for you, for me, for the school, but the jiu-jitsu community as a whole. Like that is a very important idea to keep in mind. You don't, as quirky as this may sound, flowers don't grow without sunshine. They certainly don't grow without rain, but you got to have sunshine. You got to have some positive reinforcement.
I agree. And there are certain individuals that will be able to swim, right? They'll swim no matter what.
But they're not the norm.
Exactly.
Certainly not.
Far from it. And you're going to have a very small population base that is going to be able to thrive in that type of environment. Don't get me wrong. I I would love to be occasionally where you're scrapping, right? And you have that brutality, right? But that can't be the norm. You can't
It's not
always.
sustainable, bro.
It can't. It cannot.
Yeah.
It's not
Even
sustainable.
Gordon's out.
Yeah.
Gordon, it can't sustain it.
There are the older you get, the less sustainable it is, right? But
That's
even
right.
if you're younger on, if you're beating yourself up so badly time and time again, you may still be successful. You may still get the better of any single role that you're going forward with, but it's going to have an impact.
Certainly.
But to go back to the point that we're making, yeah, it's not sustainable. You're not going to get a large population base, and maybe it's not as rewarding, because what if the person was already capable of sustaining that type of pressure from the very beginning? How did you actually make that individual grow,
Yeah.
right? Versus if you're taking somebody
Bro,
from the beginning.
We talk about this all the time. There's a difference between a teacher and a talent scout. A teacher is someone that can foster someone from the beginning who didn't have attributes, or at least they were latent or not realized, right?
And you're bringing it out of them.
And there's a talent scout. There's some guy that's out there taking credit for a super athlete that rolled in the door and voila. There's a fundamental difference in that approach.
And
it's why we don't call anybody coach in the dojo. There's no coaches.
But to make that point, to a degree, collegiate wrestling is more of talent scout based, right? Just because of the ultimate need, you need winning teams, right? Whether it's funding or whether it's notoriety or whether it's just you want to maintain some sort of legacy, you can't afford to grow from the ground up, and they have expected you to be at a certain level when you get there. But they're talent scouting everywhere. They're going to all these different state tournaments.
Let's pivot. Tell me about the relationship, because I heard you kind of touch on it with your college
coach.
Yeah, coach or mentor.
What's funny is that when I went back after jiu-jitsu is when our relationship also started to improve dramatically, right? And
why is that?
I think because naturally I was more successful, right? So like you can catch the eye a little bit easier when you're more successful. But what I was able to do, right? I think that he saw me as somebody that he had zero expectations for, survive, because there's a huge attrition rate. Every year there's an attrition rate. So if it's from freshman to sophomore to junior, you have an attrition every year. But he saw that I was still there. He saw that I went from being unsuccessful to moderately successful. And I was able to transition into more of a leadership role. And I think that's when our relationship grew. But maybe I wouldn't have been in the position to accomplish that without jiu-jitsu. I don't know. But our relationship
certainly did happen, though.
It did. I mean,
so
the result has happened. So I would assume that it did contribute, right?
Thank you for listening to the Gentle Art Podcast. Please share, rate, and review. And if you have any questions or you'd like to reach out, please contact us at the GentleArtPodcast@gmail.com, or contact us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or thegentleartpodcast.com.